Hi there, Telebait here, and over the next couple of weeks I'm going to be doing something a bit different. I'm going to be reviewing my games from the seasonal tournament and seeing what we can learn from them. The seasonal tournament was an incline tournament hosted by Riot, where the top 700 players from Masters and 324 players from the Last Chance Gauntlet compete against each other for a total prize pool of $20,000 US. For the tournament, you choose 3 decks to bring, and you have to stick with those decks the entire tournament, and each match you get to ban one of your opponent's decks. And the aim is to win with both your other decks before your opponent wins with both of his decks. For my lineup, I wanted solid all-round decks, but I wanted to also focus on being very anti-aggro because there was a lot of fearsome decks. And in hindsight, this was a big mistake because not once did I go up against a fearsome or even any sort of aggressive deck. The decks I bought were Fiora Shen, Invoke with Radiant Guardian, and Viemer. I'm not going to go through the decks in detail here, but check the description below for the deck code of each of these decks. And as you'll see from these series, 2 of these decks were really solid and I was really happy with. But the Viemer deck really let me down, and in hindsight I should have gone for a different deck, maybe a go hard deck. There was quite a few other options I had, and in the end it was just a poor choice in my particular lineup, and that meant banning was just very difficult. Going into this tournament, my aim was to get 3 wins for the card back, and it was really close. I was 2-2, and in the final match we both had 1 win each, and it came down to the very last game. And unfortunately, in that last game, I just didn't really get the cards I needed. It was a favoured matchup for me, but I just didn't get the cards I needed. Overall, I can't help but feel a little disappointed with the whole thing. I really wanted to get those 3 wins, and only getting 2, I definitely didn't meet my target set for the tournament. But I'll get another shot at it 2 months, and I'll definitely give it a better go, and I'll spend more time preparing my lineup, because the Viemer deck, I didn't really put much time into. I just copied someone else's deck, and I didn't tech it to the matchups as I should. With my other decks, I spent a lot of time teching them and creating them just how I wanted them for the matchup. With the Viemer deck, I just kind of ignored it and was like, this is a solid deck, it doesn't matter what I do. And that was a big mistake in hindsight. But I'm still glad I managed to qualify and get a couple wins, so that's the positive side. And as well, from my losses, we can go through them in these videos and see what we can learn from them. So it always makes these videos more interesting when you lose, because you can learn a lot more from a loss than you can from a win. For this video, we're going to take a look at my second match. In my first match, I won 2-0, and it was quite a stompy game. My opponent bought some very questionable decks, and it's not really worth analysing, in my opinion. The main difference in those matchups was just that his deck made no sense. So we'll go straight into match 2, and this was my first loss of the series. So looking at our opponent's lineup here, they've brought an Ash Sedge, Feel the Rush Tryndamere Trundle, and an Ezreal Swain list. Initial impressions are we have to ban the Sejuani because 2 of my decks, the main removal, are Single Combat and Concerted Strike, and Freeze shuts that down completely. So he bans my Shen Fiora, which is a bit annoying. Honestly, in a lot of these matchups, I'm hoping they ban the Viemer just because it's the deck I have the least experience on. For the first deck pick as well, you always want to pick your deck which is strongest into both these matchups, and in my opinion, that is the Invoke, because the Invoke has enough healing to survive the Ezreal Swain damage, and it still has the Obliterate cards to deal with the Warmothers deck very well. So looking at my hand here, my hand is not that great. Generally with this deck, you always want to throw away your spells, just because the only way you really brick your hand out in this deck is by getting too many spells in your deck. So I just always throw away my spells and look for units. Turn 2 here, there's the question of which Solari unit we play. If both of them get their attack off, they both get free. It's just a question of what's more vulnerable. The Solari Soldier could die to Thermo Beam, but if you use this Thermo Beam on Solari Soldier, we're kind of happy with that. So that's my preferred choice here, mainly to bait out the Thermo Beam. And also it means going into the next round when we play the Shield Bearer, the Shield Bearer has 6 health and he won't be able to deal with it immediately on that round. Whereas if he has something like Mystic Shot, I will much rather lose the 2-2 to a Mystic Shot than the 3-2. So he Static Shocks, so this is looking like something like a Flock, possibly here. Whatever he does, we're fairly happy with it. But as you can see, he used some removal and he ended up getting rid of our 1-drop instead of our 2-drop because we played the 1-drop last turn. Here, the only thing we can really do is attack or play Leona. I'm not a big fan of attacking just because Death's Hand or Mystic Shot will punish the attack quite a lot. Whereas if we play the Leona, he's going to have to use at least 2 cards to remove the Leona because she's out of Thermo Beam range. It means we don't get a stun, but against his deck, we're not really going to be making much use of these stuns anyway. So he plays House Spiders, which gives him some good blocks here. If we attack him, we could lose our units to Ravenous Flock, but they're going to be taking damage at some point anyway, so we might as well attack in, is how I feel. I don't attack here, and I think that's a small mistake because I'm going to need to block anyway. So he attacks with the 2-2, and I decide to block with the 3-2. If I'm happy taking that block, I should have always attacked with the 3-2 last round. I think it's an okay trade to take. It's just a little inconsistent blocking there and not attacking last round. Like, I'm happy to make that trade, I should have attacked with the 3-2 last round. So with Ravun on the board here, we really want to keep him alive so we can get the Nightfall and Daybreak proc on our Eclipse Dragon.
By my hand, Noxus rise.
I use the Zenith Blade here, and I think this is an okay play. It just uses up some mana, stuns one of his units so we can get a good attack in. He plays the chump one, which is a bit annoying. I feel like I should still attack him, because even if he uses a Ravenous Flock, we can use Pale Cascade to keep Leona alive, because blocking with the chump one will only bring her down to 4 health. I'm definitely playing a bit too slow here. My deck does have the better late game, but it also has a good mid game, and being aggressive in the mid game forces out all his removal early so that he won't have it on our late game units. So he uses Gotcha here just to damage the Leona. Now she's damaged, we definitely attack in.
Excuse you.
Ravenous Flock comes out, and there's not much we can do. We could use something like Single Combat, but it wouldn't kill the Swain anyway. We could also Concerted, but if he has another Ravenous Flock in hand, then it wouldn't kill the Swain, so it's too big a risk to play. He did use Swain's Ravenous Flock, so maybe a Concerted there was the right play. We draw another Leona here, and that's a really, really good draw. We definitely play the Leona straight away so he doesn't get the attack off with Swain.
The sun rock got me good.
The power of the immortal sun.
And now we can use Concerted and Single Combat to kill his Swain if needed.
Such little lies.
He plays Submersible, and it doesn't have the effect, so it's only a 1-5, so not very threatening. We really want the proc effect from Eclipse Dragon here, and to do that we need to trigger Nightfall, and Daybreak will always trigger because of the Ravun. So I use the Pale Cascade just to proc the Nightfall, and I think that's okay. We get Cadragon here, and that's really, really good, especially with the discounted cost from Eclipse Dragon. And Eclipse Dragon just gives this deck so much value. Like, the buffs to Eclipse Dragon have just made this archetype so strong. And he uses a 9 mana Thermo Beam on Leona, which I'm extremely happy with. I'm not sure why that wasn't on the Ravun or the Eclipse Dragon, which are definitely more threatening units, I feel. Here I'm happy to attack in. He has 1 Scorched Earth in his deck, and as long as my units are out of flock range, we're fairly safe. He uses Flock on the Ravun, but Ravun's done his job of getting us the double proc on Eclipse Dragon already, so I'm not particularly bothered by that. Here, we can slam down the Cadragon. The only risk to slamming down the Cadragon is if he has a way to damage our Nexus and stun our units, and then get an attack off with Swain, but we can always hush our stunned units to allow it to block. So he plays Farron here, and if he attacks in, we'll happily trade one of our dragons into it. Here, I'm opening with the Concerted just to remove one of his blockers. That I'm very happy with. I attack with Cadragon first, so that he gets the extra stats, because there's still the risk of a Scorched Earth coming down. And playing Eclipse Dragon here for more value. At this point, my board is really, really big. I'm struggling to see a way he comes back into this. And we know from before he doesn't run Noxie and Guillotine, so there's no risk of him clearing our entire board by him damaging them all. And he uses another flock to kill a unit, but at this point we're happy. We'll just grind through his flocks. Our units are so beefy, especially after the Cadragon buff, that we're not particularly worried about them being damaged and killed by flock. And he only runs 1 Execute card, so 1 Scorched Earth and no Noxian and Guillotines. At this point, the game's really in our control, and we have Radiant Guardian and the Sisters, so there's no real risk of us being burnt down. Play the Fuse Firebrand here just because of the risk of it being stunned out. I want more units to block Swain with. I could always use Hush to unstun one of the stunned units and block Swain, but there's no need to use it if you don't have to. We do have to be careful about Leviathan in these turns, but as long as I have a beefy unit and can use single combat, we are good. So he uses Gotcha to kill our unit, but at this point he has to use so much removal to remove one of our units. We're just in such a good position. And we just need to keep playing around with Leviathan here, keep up mana for Concerted Strike or single combat. Concerted Strike's a little safer because single combat can be punished by Scorched Earth if he Scorched Earth's the unit we single combat with.
After the battle,
And he finally procs Radiant Guardian so we can play it.
I fight for the fallen.
Here comes down the Leviathan, so we definitely Concerted Strike it. We could single combat, but I prefer Concerted Strike. I play the Solari Priestess first, and that's fine just to get the Daybreak block. I get the Comet, and I remember my thinking at this time, if I use the Comet to kill the Leviathan, that might tilt him slightly. Even though I have lots of different ways to remove it, the feeling that, oh, he got lucky from the Invoke. It was a bit of mind games here. So he uses Double Flock to kill the Eclipse Dragon, and at this point I feel like my Hush isn't going to get much value. So I just Hush the Eclipse Dragon so that he's no longer damaged and the Flocks won't deal damage. He then uses Mystic Shot, and at this point I'm just like, okay, I'll kill your Swain and then open attack because he's burnt all his mana.
my legacy.
Strike for justice.
Overall, I think that's a really solid game one, and I was really happy with my Invoke deck. This was the only game I got to play it with because it got banned in every other single match. Next game we pick Viemer, that's the only choice. And this is where you'll start to see Viemer letting me down. But as I'm recording this is my first time going through it, so maybe we'll see if it's my misplays or just a bad choice of deck. So in our hand early, we want units to start pressuring the board. So we throw away everything which isn't Spring Guardian. I choose to keep Get Excited, and I feel that's a mistake. The thinking about that is I could kill Warding Stones with it, but that requires him to have Warding Stones and no way to protect it like Troll Chant. Definitely would have rather mulliganed it away. Play Spring Guardian here, and I go for the Get Excited, which this is a small mistake, so I should attack first, then go for the Get Excited, just because if he has Troll Chant to protect it, I'm going to do less damage on my attack. And he does, as you see here, so I get less damage off.
Out of the springs.
He actually chooses to block it here, which I feel is a bit strange. And because I went for that Get Excited play as well, I don't have a good discard target for my Sump Dredger here. Play the Spring Guardian to get another target. We could go for the 1 mana Thermo Beam on the Warding Stones. I definitely think I should have gone for the 1 mana Thermo Beam on the Warding Stones, just because he would need a second Troll Chant to stop that. I feel that was a mistake. There is a case to be made to save the Thermo Beam for something like a Trundle, but I've already got 2 Thermo Beams in hand. And then for the attack here, I could play the Sump Dredger. If he has something like Ruination in hand, that's all my units dead. It's probably game over. Like a Ruination when I play Sump Dredger is just so bad. And he plays the Howling Abyss here, which is huge. So if he killed the Warding Stones last turn, he wouldn't have the Howling Abyss in play. Now I go for the Thermo Beam on it, and I go for the 1 just in case he has another Troll Chant. Honestly, not going for that 1 damage Thermo Beam earlier might have cost me this game, because it gets the Howling Abyss out sooner. So he plays the Alpha Wildclaw here. I think we just straight up Thermo Beam this. It's too much damage we don't want to take. And it's a good blocker for him. He could Troll Chant it, but if he Troll Chants it, we're okay with that. Heimerdinger is just such a slow play, doesn't achieve a lot. It means he still has a blocker for our attacks. Yeah, this is some seriously bad misplaying here. Like, I need to aggressively attack the board and put him under pressure. By putting him under pressure, he spends all his mana on defensive spells rather than developing, which means I can get to my Invoke cards when I need them. Yeah, here I definitely need to Invoke. I get Comet, which is great, something to deal with the Howling Abyss before he gets him too much value. So at this point, he's already got 2 champions from it, so it's got him a lot of value already. So he plays Leona here. We just have no good attacks, whereas if we Thermo Beamed the Wildclaw last round, we would have been able to attack in with 2 3/3s and a 4/3.
It's smaller than the diagram.
So he goes for Avalanche and Unspeakable Horror here. There's not really a good counter to this. Mystic Shot to kill the Warding Stones is okay, but at this point the damage is done from the Warding Stones and he's not too bothered about it. Attacking with the units here to try and pressure and get some more damage. All in all, at this point, my board is so weak. He's generating a leveled up champion a turn. It's a very difficult position to come back from. I'm not even sure what plays save me at this point. Got to play Sump Jedger just as another blocker. And then we can use Comet to deal with the Howling Abyss before it becomes too much of a problem. I should just Comet the Howling Abyss here. I'm saving it for like a Feel the Rush, but at this point he doesn't even need to play Feel the Rush. He's just grinding us out with the value from Howling Abyss. I have to kill the Howling Abyss.
Swiftly now.
Easy now.
Last light.
Star Shaping here is okay. Supernova's definitely the must take. Here I feel I should just open with the Supernova. I don't know why I'm leaving the Howling Abyss up so much.
Bask in her radiant blessing.
Out comes the Warmothers, and at this point he's getting an extra champion, he's getting a card from his deck. This is GG here.
Nice to meet you.
Attack with the 4/3, blocks with the Ash, which is a bit strange. Playing Written the Stars just to use up the rest of my mana. The game's as good as over here.
Our strength is yours. You're in your boots. Hail to the king.
And now I finally Supernova, but it's too late. Look at the size of his hand compared to mine, and most of those cards are leveled up champions. And out comes a leveled up ASOL, and this is definitely GG. Honestly, if they get a leveled up ASOL from Howling Abyss, you might as well instantly surrender. I'm not saying that the leveled up ASOL was the reason he won. I definitely deserved to use because of my poor play earlier.
To the star. Amarosans, stand together.
Yeah, and the attack thing gets the win. The big deciding factor in all of this was on turn 4, not going for the 1-mana Thermo Beam to kill off one of his Warding Stones and letting him ramp. Like, I had to force him to have the Troll Chant answer. He'd need a second Troll Chant so early on, so it's pretty unlikely, especially when it's not a card that he would generally keep in his hand anyway. And then there was also a big mistake a couple of turns later on where I didn't Thermo Beam the Alpha Wildclaw. A lot of my inexperience with this deck just coming through and not winning where I should, really. If I make those plays, I feel I win the game. I put him under so much pressure, I can just win the game so easily. Anyway, on to the final game, which is against his Ez Swain deck. And this is a case of, I just need to get some obliterates for his Leviathan before he comes down. This is a fairly decent hand here. Mountain Goat into Sump Dredger is a good combo. We're attacking turn 2 as well, so Mountain Goat can get the gem as long as he doesn't kill it. So I like the hand, keep Mountain Goat, keep Sump Dredger, throw away the other two. There is a case to keep Pale Cascade, but I don't think it's that big a deal. We really want to look for more of our Invoke cards. Plays Ezreal here, and I think this is an easy Thermo Beam. I could get excited throwing away the gem as well. Possibly a better play to use Get Excited to throw away the gem, but Get Excited can go face later on, and especially against his combination of regions, there's no healing. So burn damage directly to the face is very, very strong. On this turn, I was thinking he's already shown that he doesn't have Mystic Shots or a Death's Hand, and his best 4-drop that he could play was a Chump Wump. So trading my 3-2 into his Chump Wump is actually a better trade than trading my 4-3. So I went with the 3-2 here and keep the extra mana. And he does play the Chump Wump, so it turns out to be a really good play. Here we might as well develop, keep trying to put him under pressure. If he uses removal to kill our Sump Dredger, we're quite happy about that. It's not that important a unit. And we can cycle the gems into draws. He plays Swain here, and it's not particularly scary. There's nothing meaningful we can do. If he attacks in, we'll use one of our spells to kill him. Oh, I decide to attack in here, and this, I think, is a mistake. We have strong development. Like, we can play Spring Guardian and Sump Dredger, which is really strong development, and doesn't really get punished by much on his side. And then even if he decides to block with Swain, we can use Get Excited. So I'd much rather have developed here, and now after the attack, we're developing anyway. For 6 mana in his deck, there's nothing bigger he can really play. I basically just missed out on 7 damage here because I didn't attack in with those units. Like, on your attack, you always need to think who has the stronger development, and we have open deck lists here, so I can see exactly what's in his deck. And in his deck, nothing for 6 mana, which is a bigger unit than Swain. All his good responses would be spells, which he can use when I attack anyway, so I might as well develop.
After the battle.
So turn 7, I play the Heimerdinger, which I feel is an okay play. We have to use them at some point. He uses Flock on the Spring Guardian, and I use Star Shaping to protect it and help generate a spell. I mostly use this to generate the Celestial card, hoping for an Obliterate card, really. But I don't get it, and I feel like this is a big mistake because I've used up all the rest of my mana when I could be saving mana to develop things.
I will break. Victory awaits.
Launches at record velocities.
And he uses Death's Hand here, which stuns the unit, and because Swain's fearsome, I can't block it. So I get heavily punished by my decision to use Star Shaping. If I still had that 5 mana up, I could play the Mountain Goat, and then I could hush the stunned unit so that it can still block Swain, and then we'll be in a really good position. And now we have an empty board here, and this puts us in a really bad position. So we need to keep 8 mana up to kill Leviathan, but we can't pass, because he'll pass and then just open attack with Swain and chunk us. So we could Thermo Beam Swain, but that seems really bad. I think the best play here actually is to play Vi, then we can use the gem on Vi, buffing our attack up to 4 attack, and then use Thermo Beam for 2 damage onto Swain, which will also buff Vi's attack up to 5 attack, and therefore we could kill the Swain when the Leviathan comes down. But he'll just play Swain next turn and we won't have any removal for it. We'd have to top deck some removal. There's the Leviathan, and
There is no excess.
I attack in here hoping he'll block so then I can Thermo Beam something, but at this point the damage is done. I play Vi to be more mana efficient, but he just wins on the open attack next turn. There's not much I can do to stop it. I have to draw heal in here.
Artillery barrage! I will break them. We are at war.
So I have to Hush and Guiding Touch here to stay alive, but then that puts me too low on mana to kill the Leviathan. I use Star Shape in here, and Supernova's great. So if we make it to next turn, we might be able to survive. There comes the second Leviathan, so we'll be going down to 1 HP next turn. So I live here, and there's 2 choices, which is Supernova, or I can play the Great Beyond and go for the win. And in both scenarios, if he has any direct damage to my Nexus, I will lose. So there's not really any difference here. I feel like going for the win this turn is the better play. Gives him 1 less draw to get direct damage to my Nexus. And he did have it, which is really, really unfortunate. But there were some big, big misplays in this game, which cost me. He just lethaled me. To put that in perspective, I took 7 unnecessary damage on that turn I used Star Shaping when I didn't need to. And he only just killed me. And not only that, if I hushed my own unit and blocked Swain on that turn, the Heimerdinger would still be alive, so we'd have way more units. Honestly, this game was for the taking if I didn't use Star Shaping when I did. Which is why you really need to think about the consequences of burning yourself out of mana. I think part of it is the pressure of the situation made me rush my plays, not think them through, play a bit bad. Both games I lost were easily avoidable losses if I just used the Thermo Beam on the Warding Stones or didn't use the Star Shape in there and kept up mana for Hush. So pretty disappointed with my play, honestly, but hopefully you guys got something useful out of this and you can use some of the tips from my mistakes in these games to help you climb. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video or found it helpful, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next game review for my seasonal tournament matches. And I'll be making decks using the new cards when they release later this month. Thanks for watching and have a good day.